Got it. Okay.
What were you gonna ask me?
You want to start?
Oh yeah. So thank you, Brother Stiles, for coming and doing this so last minute. We really appreciate it. For our consulting company, my role is the CEO this week. So I just had a couple questions. So my first one is, what are some of your business's biggest successes and failures?
So I think like from our biggest success is that like the what we set out to do. Hey guys, can you chill? Hey Mav, stop throwing the snake at her, please. Sorry. Hilarious. Hey Mav, we're gonna cut that up if you keep on doing it. You understand? I'm on a call. We're good. You're good, Finn. All right. So life, guys. So the biggest successes is like we've actually achieved what we set out to do. So like we set our company aimed to kind of disrupt the migrant recruitment industry in Hong Kong, and like that has actually worked really well. So the business has grown. From a business standpoint, it's worked. From the impact standpoint, it's really worked. And so that's super exciting. I'd say it's like, as far as the failures go, about 2 years ago, or I guess almost 3 years ago, we went about setting up an agency in the Philippines, trying to kind of have similar impact on the sending side. And as of like 3 weeks ago, that we've Finley, you guys gotta go. Hey Mav, you gotta stop it. You guys are not. 1 second.
You're good.
So sorry guys. And so that is that's the biggest success and the biggest failure. The Philippines, we set out to set a business up there, and it's for a bunch of various reasons between corruption and COVID and different things, it failed. And so so that would be one that definitely failed.
Okay, and just like a really quick follow-up question to that. Do you think that's been the hardest obstacle you've had to overcome starting and running your business?
Like corruption? Yeah, probably. Right. Like that's probably the biggest thing.
I do have another question about that.
Yep.
After realizing that Philippines have corruption and stuff, like what have you ever thought about what you could have done to overcome it?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we knew the Philippines was corrupt from day one. So we actually, the original plan when I moved there was actually to acquire another agency and skip a lot of the corrupt processes, acquire the business instead of trying to start one up, because the corruption in starting a business in a lot of these countries is the real bottleneck, and it's what prevents you from ever getting off the ground. And so we actually tried to do that at first because we knew it was a problem. That deal fell through about a month after I had actually moved my family there. And so that sucked real bad. But the people who we were trying to operate it with, it was going to be a problem no matter what. And so we did that. Now, knowing what I know now, we probably would have held off and tried to find another group that we could take over, but had kind of shot for having less control over the company than we anticipated or wanted, right? So instead of trying to really own a company top to bottom, we would have tried to have a 25% stake and then kind of alter their practices over time. But when you're in the position that we were in, you don't know that, right? Now, doing that would have created a bunch of other problems for ourselves, because the way that we got it funded and the way we raised money and everything, it needed to be something that we controlled, because we were getting funding from like big governments and things like that. And so we would have had to kind of redirect the whole funding strategy for it. But I do think we could have done that, right? So that was a solvable thing that if we would have known everything that we know now, we would have done that differently. Yeah, for sure. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I'm thinking, so Is there a time you were talking about fundings, right? So I don't know about like your company's financial situation, but would you like to share with me about a time where you helped to increase efficiency or cut costs, like help your company financially, especially in the cost area?
Yeah, I mean, so part of the, I mean, as far as like cutting costs, like I'm way more focused on generating more revenue than cutting costs, because a business like ours, there's so many kind of fixed costs and direct expenses that you really, it's about being better at your job versus like paying less, right? So for example, like some of our big expenses, they're like fixed expenses that we pay to our partner agency in the sending country. And so, but then it's basically like that. And then, so you have that as one of your big costs. And then you have your next one is the flight ticket, stuff like that. And the reality is, like, for us to try to find cheaper flight tickets is just not worth our time, right? Like, it's just, so we basically go on to the cheap airlines, look at a few, choose them, and we're good, right? Now, when it comes to cutting costs, like one of the things that we've done is historically is like just focused on real estate and finding really good values on rents for good locations. And so like that's an area that like we've been really good at, because we always are negotiating leases and we're always getting into leases before we actually need to, right? So if just a tip for anybody, if you're going to be moving offices, make that decision 9 months before you decide that before your lease is up, so that by the time you're there, you've negotiated, you've seen how much you can drive down your current landlord, and then you can also be in really good position to negotiate as time goes on and not have to jump into anything. And so that's one, like a good example. One of the companies that we've invested in, that I'm a board member on, they came just a couple of weeks ago and they said, hey, our office space, they're in Malaysia and there's kind of some security concerns. Specifically, like they have a Muslim employee, and Muslim women there's much more high like likelihood that they're going to be sexually harassed or sexually assaulted. And the community that their office is in just didn't feel safe to her. And they said, we need to make a change. And they came and they said, hey, we want to go to this snazzy co-working space. It's going to be awesome. And blah, blah, blah. And they kind of walked through all these things about it. They're like, it's going to cost us, just a little bit more than our current space. Right. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, how long will it cost? How long will it cost that? Right. How long before, when you hire 3 more people, what's it going to cost? And they give me the numbers. I said, okay, cool. Well, what about the cost of you needing to go greet people at the door whenever they come in, because you're in a co-working space, so they don't know where to go, versus you having your own office space that people can walk directly to. And so we started to kind of layer those costs on, and just the inefficiencies and just kind of the crappiness of day-to-day life when you don't have your own space. And we said, well, actually, you're not going to be saving money. You're going to be losing money 2 months from now. And it's going to be this pain in the butt. Why don't you just make a move to an office space that's more suitable right now? You're probably looking at, a $1,500 difference over these 2 months, but then you're going to be saving money after that. Right. And so that's a good example. I think that real estate is one of the things that you can be really strategic in and just really thoughtful. Whereas other things, you don't have the leverage to negotiate to drive down prices across the board. Does that make sense?
I'm from Malaysia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where in Malaysia?
I'm from East Malaysia. I know West Malaysia too, but I think Malaysia has gone.
Where are you from? Sarawak? Where are you from?
I'm from Sabah.
Sabah. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, the team that I'm working with there, they have a lady from Kuching, and so they're actually looking at opening up a branch in Kuching as well.
Oh, Kuching. I've been there. Kuching. I know Kuching.
Yeah. So really cool. I love
Well,
Malaysia.
I think you don't have to worry about Muslim people in Sarawak, because they don't have as much. It's not a lot of Muslim people, and the Muslim people there are not as conservative, and they're more open. Yeah.
Yeah. So did I accurately portray do you think is the way that I said that offensive or no?
Oh, no, not at all. Because I know they probably make it more dramatic, but it's actually not. So it's just the business part. Like they're trying to convince you. That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Where they are is in a weird neighborhood though. So that was the other part of it. Is like it was a really dark hallway going up, but I think you're right. Like I kind of took that, but my whole thing is that as a 6'2" dude, if a woman tells me they feel unsafe, I'm going to listen to when they tell me they feel unsafe, right? Like it's not my place to be like, you shouldn't, well, you're not really at risk, right? Like that's not, and I could see like it was a neighborhood that I wouldn't feel comfortable with my wife walking around late at night, right? And so that was like, it was like, okay, like they were doing legitimate things like walking each other out to the car at night. And like, it's a big world. Like there's enough places in the world that you don't feel like you have to do that. So I understand going there, especially when you have workers coming from, they're migrants that are coming up and through these offices. It doesn't feel very safe for them.
I got it.
So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I love Kuala Lumpur though. It was actually the best food in the world.
I agree. I agree with that. I love the food.
The food's so good. So awesome. So any other questions?
Yeah, so I have a question. What is a typical workday like for an employee in your business?
Yeah, it's everybody has different work days, right? So like we'll choose the modal work day, right? So the most common, the one that has the most people doing it. They come in at around 9 o'clock in the morning. They have a morning meeting that's about 30 minutes. And they basically, we'll say for the sales team, it's a sales meeting. And they're going through talking about their clients, talking about who they're working with, what they're doing. And basically there's part of a sales team that is focused on interviews and recruitment and bringing workers in the door. There's part of the sales team that's focused on making the matches. And so those two groups should be talking together and kind of walking through who could be a good fit for which employer. After that, they probably around 10 o'clock, they hop on their computers and respond to messages from their employers and their workers. And basically the goal for them is to stay making matches as quickly as possible so that the good workers are able to be identified and matched to employers as quickly as possible. And so, they do that, they hop on, do some email, they probably do email for an hour or so. And then they're going to be getting on the phones to do their first calls as far as their new clients go, probably around 11 to noon. They do those calls, go have lunch, come back from lunch, and then it's going to kind of accelerate on the processing side, where it's following up with people to make sure that they're seeing the progress that they want, and talking to clients as well as working through the visa processing procedures and what's going to be required, resolving concerns and stuff like that. We try to get everybody out the door at 6, which is super unique for a Hong Kong company. But the reality is like people who are okay working until like late at night every night are usually not the most high capacity people anyways, right? Like usually they want to do that because then it's like they feel like they're working hard, but they're not as focused on kind of the measurable things that you care about. And so we try to get everybody out around 6 o'clock. And then a lot of times people go to dinner and stuff like that after that. So that's kind of what a work day looks like.
Awesome. And a follow-up question to that. You talked about like some of the difficulties and failures that you've had like on a larger scale, but what are some that are like more commonly seen day to day? What are some of the struggles that come up?
Of me or my team?
I would say, let's go with your team. The people that you.
We can do me too.
Okay.
I think we can do both. Right. So like, for me, like if I were to point to like in the last few months, one of the, like when I've done a poor job, right? I think the most common thing is I think that other people are communicating more than they are, right? So an example is there was our head of communications and our general manager had this idea for a software add-on that she wanted to put onto kind of our operating system, right? Like our enterprise system that we're using, right? And so she had this idea. The head of communications heard the idea and said, okay, she really wants to talk to you about this. And we got on this call and she brought up a lot of other concerns, right? And the concerns were really about the process of our business, had nothing to do with software. And in fact, they were using the software thing as a crutch to say that would solve their problems, right? And what happened was I thought that because it had come from both of them, because they had been, they'd kind of talked to together, I spent time kind of unwinding this with both of them and basically explaining how they weren't thinking this thing through. And I did it in a way that was probably 10% more edgy than I needed to be. But the problem with it is that I thought that they had like, they brought me like, they showed like these documents that they'd done. I thought that they were so far along in this when in the process, when in reality they weren't probably as far along as they acted like they were.
Yeah.
And so my thing was like, why are we focused on this when we have these gaping problems that are in front of us, right? And what happened is I probably could have taken a step back, asked 3 or 4 more questions, and realized that they were trying to impress me with how far along they were.
Uh,
And they're trying to impress me led to me thinking that they'd wasted hours and hours of time without identifying the real problem, right? And so that was one where, and what happened with that is that when you work through something like that, you basically, you have people that kind of think it can be bad on their self-esteem. Now I'm super direct and they're used to me being direct. The difference with this is that there was 2 people who were pushing on an idea that I was rejecting outright. And why it was frustrating to me is that they hadn't identified the right problem at all. And it felt like they put all this work into something thinking that it was going to get rubber stamped, when the reality is, and they were acting from their perspective, they thought that I cared about the money of the investment of the software, and I didn't care about the money of the software. I was worried that we were identifying the wrong problems, not just the wrong solution, right? And so that was one where I could have, and what happened is the way I responded to it was pretty direct, and I was kind of a jerk, I guess. Like I wasn't like nasty, but I was ruder than I needed to be. Like I said, maybe 10%. Nobody was crying, nobody was like really bothered, but they kind of got off the phone and said, well, then how are we supposed to solve these problems, right? And so I didn't build the confidence in them. And I think I could have, with 3 or 4 questions, I could have redirected, and I could have probably given more support on that. So that was one where I screwed up, and that was unfortunate. On the day-to-day, it's that we have had trouble with people basically falling away from the processes that we put into place, right? And it's management is just way harder than people think it's going to be, right? And so the reality is that as time goes on, people, you can teach them how to do something, but everybody starts to slack off. Everybody starts to kind of not do those things. And so even like for our company, when I had that conversation, we realized that we weren't implementing some of our script work. We weren't implementing some of the kind of the empathy building and trust building with our clients. And it was creating a bunch of problems down the line. And so we basically had to provide those solutions to the team again, and focus on our scripts and the way that we're kind of communicating with people. And people hate the idea of doing that. Now, the funny thing is that we implemented that. We'd been really, COVID has been hard on us, but we implemented that in January, and January was our record January we've ever had, right? And so just by making these simple tweaks, people often want to look to the big things to solve problems and improve, but it's really the small and simpler things that are going to make you excellent.
Perfect. Thank
Sorry,
you.
it was a long answer.
No, that was good.
Okay.
I
and
like
then
you
just-
mentioned small simple things are important, and it makes things excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do too. That's why I said it.
Okay, and then just one more question. So where was your business when you first started versus where it's at now? And where do you see it going in the next 5 years or so?
So when we started, it was me. I actually wrote up this business plan for the business plan competition at BYU Hawaii. So I wrote this idea up before the business plan competition, and I sent it out, and some folks at Goldman Sachs got it and said, hey, we'll fund you if you do this. And so I graduated and I moved out, and they were like, whoa, you're serious? I'm like, I'm dead serious. I have a pregnant wife at home. And they're like, okay, well, here's money. And so it was me. I had 2 co-founders that were directors. And so that was literally where we started, right? We started from me in your position, right? And then right now we have the agency that we have in Hong Kong has about 20, 25 staff. We have a foundation, which I think we're up to 6 staff at our foundation. And then we have about 10 staff at our training center in the Philippines. So we're about 35 people. And what we've done is, and we have that agency in the Philippines that we're shutting down. And then we have our investment in Malaysia as well. And so basically when we look across the board, we have, we're at the right size for our organization and what we want to do right now. But what we want to do is instead of trying to, and after this experience in the Philippines, instead of trying to go set up our own businesses there, where me as a white dude is going to get shut down and asked for bribes, and people do not want me there. We're going to be investing in them like we're doing in Malaysia. So we're finding local entrepreneurs that are awesome, that believe in our mission, believe in our vision, and then we're trying to invest in them and actually give them money as well as kind of support and mentorship to help guide them through these challenges. And so that's where we really want to be. And so right now we're in the process of raising kind of an investment portfolio that we're going to be investing over the next 4 or 5 years. So 5 years from now, I hope we have 4 or 5 investments that have been made, and I hope that we've raised a ton of money to do a much bigger round on more financially viable investment terms.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is that it? Are those all of our questions?
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. We're good.
Yep.
Yes, thank you so much.
Alrighty, guys. Take care.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.